It is Monday night. It is Newswatch Oklahoma. And there is Storm Jones.
Hey.
And check out that fire.
Usually, we're down in the office, and I told you, Scott, I was foregoing a nap this evening. So I figured we'd move it to the living room, a little pitter patter. It's just nice little spring evening.
Ain't it so? It's so good to have you. And I'm not sure what you were up to today. I know that everybody their clock is a little bit goofy right now because the session is ongoing, and nobody's here. So we'll get to that in just a second. We're going to talk some elections tonight. Where there was a big Republican primary event in Duncan Saturday night. Tim Farley with Southwest Ledger was down, who's been around. Tim has been around for a long time. He's had an eyewitness. We pre-recorded something a little bit earlier. He couldn't join us live. And then Storm, I'm just going to pick his brain about what's going to be going on this week. There are some thin skin, short tempers, some egos involved. We got a bunch of fun stuff. But first, let's start making predictions, okay? Right after the Sooners win in the national championship next year, do you have let's just go ahead and let's throw this guy into the mix. You've seen him, you heard him on my radio shows, you saw him in the state legislature, and now he is a big-time corporate polling executive. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Loveless. Give me a hand. I've been wanting to do that for some time. I hadn't hooked that.
You can keep playing it.
We just keep on going. What you don't want to hear on some of these is you don't want to hear this. When you make a statement, hear this. That sort of stuff. You got to be really careful. Kyle Loveless with the Shepherd. It's great to see you. We were seeing all of what you were doing last week on News 9, News on 6, the polling. Wow. I'm watching what's going to happen tomorrow in Alabama and Georgia. And let's just get right to it. There's the old mainstream Reagan Republicans, and there's the MAGA wing. And when I look at Oklahoma, although I'm not really sure which is which, I got to tell you, governor's race, a lot of people coming after the governor right now. It doesn't seem to be making any effect whatsoever. A lot of people throwing rocks, and James Langford's too liberal. It doesn't seem to be doing anything to him there.
No.
Now, when you go down the list, what I would say, the MAGA wing challenges to the folks that are there. Am I wrong, or is the headline, it ain't working?
Well, you see some Trump fatigue throughout the country, but they're kind of like a peripheral. It's not really sunk in yet. And I think that's partially because most presidents, former presidents, when they ride off into the sunset, we don't ever hear from them again. George Bush made a statement last week on how bad it was to invade Ukraine. However, when's the last time we've heard from him? You know what I'm saying? And so even though he did flub the line and say Iraq, we haven't seen George W. in a long time. And so that's normally the norm. And so Trump is actively involved. And I think part of it is because, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone. He's gearing up to run again. And so I think in Oklahoma, it's still, his coattails still go pretty deep. So, and we saw that in our polling, and you guys mentioned it last week on one of your broadcasts, that we did ask that. We asked if Trump endorsed a candidate, how would it affect? And, 60-some%, a big chunk said, it would greatly influence my decision. And so now, granted, we were only asking Republicans, but, and I think that will come to play in the U.S. Senate race. He's already got involved in the governor's race. He's already said he's, is about as supporter of Stitt as you could do. And, short of him coming to Oklahoma for campaigning for Governor Stitt, which I don't see happening because he's not anywhere close to being in danger. So I would still say that, in the U.S. Senate race and then maybe some congressional races, the CD2, that might come into play of where, each candidate's trying to be more Trump friendly, I guess. So, but yeah, I still think in Oklahoma, he still has high name ID, high favorables, at least for Republicans.
The Tulsa World had an article out the other day about the governor apparently playing golf with Trump and accidentally inviting him to the PGA Championship.
To Tulsa.
Yeah, the former president noted that, he won all 77 counties here twice.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if the president wanted to come play some golf at the tournament that he lost out on.
Yeah, the governor apparently told the world that he stuck his foot in his mouth right after he said that.
And I think honestly, that's one of the things that, for on the left and people that are pro education establishment, they don't like that about Governor Stitt. But I think Republicans and Main Street folks, they like it, even though he did make a mistake there, or misspoke. But
Sure.
he seems like a normal guy, and so as normal as a multimillionaire can be, I think he comes across as genuine, and that's why his numbers are so high.
Is there one thing that y'all have found where he may be more susceptible? I mean, is there a weak spot on this? Folks maybe thought, well, the tribal issues maybe would be a wedge for challengers, or some folks have suggested even abortion. It's too far on the abortion side.
The problem with, the main issues that you've listed, McGirt, abortion, education, some big issues of the last 5-6 months. They're not easy concepts. Like, try explaining McGirt to a sixth grader. Try explaining McGirt to, you know what I'm saying? Try explaining McGirt to your state legislators. Sometimes it's difficult and complicated and multifaceted. So it's not like, it is something to where the tribes have been very clear about their opposition to Governor Stitt. And I don't think that's of any shock. So I don't think he was surprised by that at all. So I think you can kind of see, well, there's that trouble there. But I don't think it's easily definable. It's not like, well, he did it because of this or what. So when it comes to people voting, when it comes to people getting in there and punching their ballot, a lot of times it comes down to a simple issue. And abortion's one that is still even more kind of complex, because Oklahomans are pro-life. And so they don't, so by and large, and especially Republicans by and large. And so usually you get like the Reagan Republicans that want to do the carve out for incest and rape, but they're not going to stop a ban of abortion for those carve outs. And so, and when the governor has already, proudly said that he wants to be the most pro-life governor in the country, and if any pro-life piece of legislation gets to his desk, he's going to sign it. You can't really backtrack that. You can't really say, I didn't mean it, or it's just, because Governor Fallon a couple of times held off and hedged a little bit. And it wasn't because she's not pro-life, because she is, but it was just she has a different nuance on it. And she never promised, I'm going to sign every piece of legislation. So that's the difference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about some of the high profile stuff. And then Storme and I'd really like to ask about some of the less reported stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Let's start with the top. From what I saw, the favorable or somewhat favorable of Donald Trump is somewhere around 90% in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, according to our polling, now we just, like I said, we just did Republicans. It was 80%. And he was the highest Republican. Behind it, you had Stitt, which was still in the margin of error at 77. And then still within the margin of error, you had Senator Langford at 75.
Okay. Then on the other side of the ticket is somewhat disapprove or really disapprove, whatever your numbers were, with the guy that's a current guy.
Yes, very
in the White House. Right?
Well, that one, I think
the president.
You're going to get, you're going to get people, diehard Republicans, automatically because they don't like him as a Democrat. But then you're going to have like your normal, I don't call them normal Republicans, it's not fair, but you're the person that votes every 4 years, that is not a high follower of politics, or, they turn into Fox every once in a while. They just know that filling up the gas tanks quadrupled, or, not necessarily quadrupled, but, it's gone up significantly. A gallon of milk has gone up to, $4 or $5 a gallon when it used to be $3. Kitchen table issues, they know that the economy is not going well. They know, we all saw the kind of the botched job in Afghanistan removal. Now, as we said before, that's a complex issue. Trump started the plan, but then Biden implemented it. Well, he messed it up. And so So you kind of, you know what I'm saying? So those are and then also you have the social issues nationwide about social sexual identity and things. Those things are in the background a lot, but when those economic issues are hitting you in the wallet, that's where you're like, whoa, you know. And so you see, and it's you see at the pump when it's $4 or $5 a gallon, you got the little sticker on there with Biden's face, President Biden's face. I did that, you know. And so I mean, that's just whether he, and that's when you run for the biggest office in the land, whether it's your actual doing or not, you buck stops with you, as Harry Truman said.
So riddle me this. If Biden's so unpopular and the former president is so popular, why do people like this Dr. Sherwood, this Pastor Lay Miller, Senator Dom, why are they doing so bad?
Well, I think part of that is they're polling bad. They're not doing so well in the polls. But you're going to have Tim Farley on later about the event down in the fish fry that he went to. I'm telling you, they're popular with the activists, and the activists, which are the diehards that knock neighborhoods, that they follow Fox News, that they watch OAN News, that they watch Newsmax. The diehard Republicans vote 4 out of 4 times. I mean, the people that that Keating and Reagan wasn't conservative enough for them. Those folks, they love Nathan Dahm. They love Jackson Lay Miller. They love Sherman. But there's just not a lot, that number of them across statewide. I mean, you have people like they're very popular in like Broken Arrow and certain parts of the metro area, but by and large, as we've seen, they're just not as popular. And it's hard to say. It is really hard to say that Senator James Langford is a rhino. It is very difficult to get that message. I mean, T.W. Shannon, when he ran for the open Senate seat, a few years ago, and it was Langford versus TW, and he had the tribes helping him. TW had all the lobbyists at the Capitol helping him. His third group parties tried to pitch Senator Langford, Congressman Langford at the time, as a liberal. That just went over like a lead balloon. It just did not go over well. And that was TW's kind of an apex, was when he started going negative against James Langford, because people forget, a month out or 3 weeks out, TW was in the lead. He was in the lead for a significant period of time. Once they went negative, and by negative, I'm not saying, sometimes truthful ads, don't work, but when you go after someone as conservative as Langford, sometimes it just doesn't resonate. And the issues that Dom and Jackson Laymeyer and the others have with Senator Langford, they may be a truthful point. And that may be, but it's almost to the point, and Reagan used to say, someone that votes with me 90% of the time isn't a 10% enemy. That's, what I'm saying? So Langford may not be completely what they want as a senator, but he's there 90% of what they want. So it's just that little bit there that is kind of where it's just not resonating with your average Republicans right now.
Let's get to the Storm Jones debate. Also going to be Trey Savage will at non-doc. Hosted by non-doc. News 9 is going to be involved. In fact, Storm's going to be on the stage there with Trace.
Yeah.
Asking these questions. So now, right now, my understanding is you've got AG, Storm, and also State Superintendent, right? Are those the two non-doc?
Yeah, State Superintendent's June 22nd, AG June 16th. And then we also have Oklahoma County DA, the Republicans and Democrats separately.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
The jail debate.
And then News 9 has the Inhofe Senate seat scheduled for June 7th.
I believe. Got it down here. I'm telling people right now, you really need to watch that U.S. Senate. We're going to be doing some techie things on that one that ain't been done before. Okay.
What's the date on that?
We're going to look at the old calendar here, which is going to take just a moment as I scroll into it. June,
maybe wrong.
It is the 9th, Thursday the 9th, 8 o'clock.
And that's the top 5 as per our Sooner poll, News 9, News on 6 Sooner poll. So
let's start with this one. That state superintendent, Kyle, looked to me like ain't nobody paying attention right now.
That's correct. Which you gotta believe that right now, Ryan Walters hates that because there is a guy. He is a hard worker, and just because I follow him on social media, he enrages the establishment of education establishment. Like he does all these social media videos from his car, and now there's parodies and all kinds of stuff. It's actually kind of funny to watch from a political science perspective.
By the way, the
But
parodies are Craig McVeigh, the retiring superintendent out at El Reno with the straw hat.
right, but
Okay,
but
so
the point of the matter
that's who
is,
that
right
is.
now, according to our polling, now granted, they're all within the margin of error, so it could just been within one or two spots of each other, and so, but the number one vote getter is John Cox, the at 10%, because I think it's a lot because they remember his name, but they don't remember that he was a Democrat. When he ran last time, it was as a Democrat. So I'm sure that Ryan Walters and others, as they spend their money, will point that out. And so, and then that's another one we're going to see how influential is the governor's coattails, because the governor has not shied away. The governor has made it clear he is for his Secretary of Education, and that is Ryan Walters. So I think it's going to be, I hate to, it's one of those things where those who has the money can get out and on TV the quickest and the longest, will build up their name ID and be successful.
So no prediction on that one. We don't know where that's going.
You're gonna, I mean, with four people, you're probably gonna have a runoff. There's just no doubt about it. So then the question becomes, honestly, how many votes William Crozier gets? He's the guy, if you remember correctly, proposed years ago when he ran to use textbooks as bulletproof vests. So if he gets above 5%, which will be protest vote, that it will definitely draw it into a runoff. And I mean, you're going to probably, in my estimation, you're probably going to have it between Ryan Walters and April Grace. And the only reason why I say that is, I would say and with it there being 77% undecided, it really is a roll of the dice right now. But organization, endorsements, money, I got to think Ryan Walters has the tools to put him in front. Now, because he's in front, he gets a lot of the baggage, and he has some baggage, and so far he hasn't explained it. And so I think that's where money and influence and all that stuff comes, and it will help. Now, a lot of times people won't bring that out to the runoff, but it sounds like they're trying to do it now.
Man, this is an extension of that school choice battle that we see
Correct.
every year.
That's exactly right. And
Let's get to AG.
You have one person that's pro school choice, and by school choice I mean actual ESAs, as Pro Tem Treat likes to call them, or accounts, versus John Cox, who is an establishment candidate. He was a superintendent, so he's not going to want to rock the boat. And April Grace out of Shawnee, her baggage is there's that big sexual predator coach that stayed there for 10 years, that could be a problem for her. So that one, to me, you're going to have the battle will be for number two, in my opinion.
The AG race. I was kind of surprised at the numbers, but yet not surprised too. But what did you find in that race right now?
Well, I think I tweeted with a couple people earlier today. It's kind of like Gettner Drummond. The roles of incumbent versus challenger have been switched, because A.G. O'Connor was appointed, and he's been vocal. I mean, he's been vocal and visible. However, he's never been on the ballot before. People don't know where he is on a lot of issues. And so all we know is he was appointed by Governor Stitt, and from my understanding is in line with Governor Stitt's opinion on McGirt. Well, Gettner Drummond, if you remember, rewind 4 years ago, he decided on Friday of filing to run, and he dropped like $1 million of his own money and was on the TV within a week. So people remember him from 4 years ago. That's a lot of his advantage right now, is because people remember him from 4 years ago. And I felt like it was just a very smart tactical decision. They knew they were going to get hit because he was a $1,000 contributor to Joe Biden. Well, come to find out, it wasn't from him. It was from his wife. And it was one of those instances where she made a rash decision and donated $1,000. Well, they ended up getting the refund back from the Biden campaign. Well, I just think it's funny. They had a TV commercial ready to go. The AG race is going to be the nastiest race of them all, because they had a TV commercial ready to go explaining how they got their money back, and law enforcement with Cleveland County Sheriff, Tulsa County, and a rural sheriff saying, you don't think we would trust endorsing someone that was friends with Joe Biden, do you? I mean, that is powerful as a response. So when you have the Cleveland County Sheriff, which is the number 3 in the state, the Tulsa County, which is number 2 in the state, I mean, that has some serious weight. And I want to say Atoka, but I don't remember. It was a rural county sheriff, and all 3 of them in there in their uniforms saying Gettner Drummond is tough on crime, and he got the unanimous endorsement of the police unions. So they were ready for it. So it was almost like they knew it was coming, and so they kind of slapped that down. Now, will people make a decision later on if he gave money to other Democrats? Well, that'll still be remain. But for that one that he donated against Joe Biden, that will definitely come up at your debate.
I think there's probably another test of the governor's coattails on O'Connor as well, right? Because obviously it's his handpicked man now seeking the spot.
Right. That is definitely one. But again, the Attorney General's office is the top lawmaker of the land. One issue that keeps coming up that as Republicans, when we were in the minority, Scott, you may remember this, we were in the minority, we griped about Drew Edmondson and Mike Turpin and all the other AG. Why in the world do they contract out their labor? They have 30, 40, 50 lawyers in the Attorney General's office. And you're telling me that the biggest and brightest of our state can't handle a case? So, and whether or not there might be a specialty that they may be outside of, but when you're talking about, I mean, it seems like a lot of cases have been that O'Connor has gone to outside groups. That is kind of a standard practice, but the problem is Republicans hate it. Because why are we spending our taxpayer dollar doing that when we have the people there in place? So,
do you recall that was the big issue between Gettner Drummond and Mike Hunter 4 years ago?
Right.
And it had a lot to do with the opioid case. And as I recall, there may have been some news about that in the last couple of years. And a bill, which I read recently in Non-Doc, where I do most of my reading, there was a bill that wasn't that part of the O'Donnell bill, Storm, the 984?
Yeah, to limit contracts.
Limit the outside contracts. And of course, Gettner is telling people, we told you this was going to happen 4 years ago. And you've got this going on in the middle. We just had that 1433 battle out there at the Capitol, which the assessors finally gave up on that one. I guess they had a roll call vote. And so that turned loose. I guess that's going to turn loose a bunch of ad valorem money. But these bureaucrats and these outside contracts, it never seems to go away. So what you're saying to me, Kyle, you think that's going to be that's sort of the same issue again?
I think that especially when coming to legal cases, and especially about McGirt, if there was ever a case that probably deserved outside counsel, McGirt's probably one, because it is so complex. And so, but that being said, there's other cases out there that have been, farmed out to other law firms. And I think that the question is, when you have a staff of 20, 30, 40, 50 lawyers, why can't you have somebody on staff to handle that? So it's just a simple question. And I mean, there are instances where it's probably common, but again, Republicans just are, I wouldn't say abhorrent, but the question is, how do they respond when they see an ad? Like so-and-so gave, candidate X gave their buddy $2 million for a legal case, because they couldn't do it in their own office. It just stinks bad. And it could be completely factual, but it may be even necessary. And it's just hard. And it's the old saying: if you're playing defensive, your message isn't getting across. So AG O'Connor has an uphill battle, and so I think that one's going to be where he comes out. I mean, he's already started swinging, and we're just going to see if he can make that 18, 15, 20-point game.
The other day, even the Swadleys, when the state announced they're suing Swadleys, that was initially filed with outside counsel, and it's like they're suing on behalf of the state over a state contract. This isn't McGirt in front of the Supreme Court.
That's absolutely right. Now that is another one where it is so pervasive. But again, you know who I would hire? Cindy Bird. She's, I mean, you know, she's, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to hire an auditor or something to hire, I mean, if you don't want to handle, I mean, so yeah, that was one of the first things that came up in my, when I saw that lawsuit was, why did they hire an outside firm?
Right.
So, there's 2 scores I like the box scores every morning, being a baseball guy.
Yeah,
I'd like to know the following. Well, I mean, I'm okay with the Reds. I'm a Reds fan.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm rooting for a AA team this year. Well, MLB still charging major league prices for tickets and their gear, but watching AA team. I would love to know, you know, the legislature 2 years ago gave, I guess it was O'Connor at the time, or was it? I can't recall. Anyway, the point was they gave what, $10 million Storme to go out there and fight the federal government. And has O'Connor won any of those? I'd love to know what the outcome has been with that money.
I think if you've asked him, he has. Okay. But I don't know if they have. I don't know. I can't recall any big cases that they've fought back on and won.
The second thing I'd like to know is how many anti-abortion bills have passed Oklahoma in this legislative session? It's a bunch. I mean, people keep talking about that one. And doesn't the AG have to defend most of those when the lawsuits start coming?
That is true.
So, man, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of work over there. That's some scorekeeping to do. And I know, unless you had one more question about that, Storm, I was going to move on to the DA. That's a biggie.
It is.
Because when you start talking about state government, that district attorney has been a lot of things happen in Oklahoma County.
Right.
So David Prater's, he's retiring. You have a lot of folks. By the way, are you doing that? Are you going to be doing that debate, Storm?
Yeah, both. We'll do the Republicans earlier in the evening and then the 2 Democrats later in the evening on the 15th.
Did you guys take a look at that, Kyle? That race?
Well, we're still in discussions with a couple people to do that race. I don't know if it's ever been pulled yet or that it's been done. I know that we're wanting to. I think it's something that's very important. I think that you have Kevin Calvi as the front runner because name recognition primarily. Nobody knows who the gentleman that worked in the DA's office for 9-10 years. Nobody knows him. Jackie Ford, now to my credit, is a personal friend of mine. So I've known her for a good 5, 6, 7 years. But, each one of them are raising their own money to spend. It's going to be interesting to see basically who gets into the runoff with Kevin Calvi. Calvi's going to try to drop a lot of money to avoid a runoff. But it's going to be hard.
Kevin has finished first in a lot of races, and then in runoffs runs into problems, right? I mean,
that's correct.
So sometimes it's just everybody against Kevin,
right?
So where do you see? I mean, does a Democrat? Vicky Behena is running as a Democrat. I forget the name of the other Democrat, but she is well known, okay, and admired in this community. So my question is, can a D compete in this one, Kyle?
Absolutely, because you've seen this before redistricting. CD5, which was primarily Oklahoma County, was an at-risk seat. Steve Russell lost, and Donald Trump almost lost Oklahoma County 4 years ago. I mean, it was under a few thousand votes. So that's not much for Oklahoma County. So Oklahoma County itself, both demographically and by registration, has trended as light of pink to even, to blue as you can get. When you have gains by Cindy Munson and Dunnington and all these others that, seats that, in the South, you have all the state reps and the state senators that, Kay Floyd, all of those that in seats that could have and historically have been done by Republicans. You can see how we've lost some metro area seats in the last 5-10 years. David Holt's seat, for instance, where, actually from where I'm broadcasting right now, it was a Democrat pickup. So that is one where Oklahoma County DA's race is going to be a barn burner. It is Republican versus Democrat. It is going to be now. It's going to be Republicans should have the advantage because it is a presidential. I mean, it's not a presidential year, but it's a gubernatorial year. So you're going to have a lot, and it's a Democrat that's actually running a competitive race, and so you're going to have a lot of turnout. So it's the Oklahoma race is going to be very, very close to watch, regardless of who wins the primary and runoff.
I think sometimes folks forget too. David Pritter's a Democrat. Not that obviously, but for a bit, but.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. When he shows up and he's supporting the police, and when those protests were going on, and he said, "I'm going to charge you with, all these different charges." I mean, that was something that made a statement. I mean, he's been a stalwart, and most people think he's a conservative, lock him up type of guy, which he is. And so, I mean, people think that he has been a Republican, even though he's had a Democrat for a long time. But no, he's had a hard as nails reputation.
One final question. I promised we'd get you out of here in half an hour. We're getting pretty close. What kind of boots have you got on right now, by the way?
Well, right now I am in some Nikes.
Get out of here. Kyle Loveless and Nikes.
I wear jeans sometimes, and I my boots sometimes when I get home, because I'm at home now, I kind of just take them off and take it easy.
Well, I know that you're wearing
today I was wearing Buffalo, so that if that helps you, I was wearing all Buffalo boots.
All right, my faith in mankind is restored. A final question. We've only mentioned the D word a couple of times here. So Kendra Horn's going to be the presumptive Democrat nominee for United States Senate.
Right.
And Joy Hoffmeister, I'm going to assume, is going to pick up that Democrat nomination to run against Governor Stitt in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Getting handicapped that far away?
I think you can. And I'll tell you, because Republicans have picked up such a large registration margin for decades, and me growing into it, it was like, oh, we're never going to take majority status. And we did. And it's been growing, and the Democrats have been falling off, and Biden hasn't helped. And, even before then, Barack Obama didn't really help registration wise, and even go back even further to Clinton, we thought Clinton was going to be the low point. Nope. And so the Democrats statewide in this race, unless, and Kendra Horn has pigeonholed herself. She's pigeonholed herself because she voted for Nancy Pelosi and she voted against Trump. And so those two things right then and there, she has a disadvantage. Is from all intents, it did a good job as a congresswoman, not her voting, but constituent wise. So she did a good representation as an actual congresswoman. Voting wise, she voted way more left than her actual district was. And so the problem is, running statewide, she has many challenges with that. So to me, that's the issue there. I think right off the bat, whether it be Markwayne Mullin, whether it be TW, the party's going to come together, and they'll support whoever we have. And if it's TW, he will have national money. I mean, he will because he's an up and coming national star, plain and simple. Mark Wayne is a great family man and business owner that started with almost nothing, and so, and he resonates with the common man and resonates with the rancher, and so that's one of those things where I think it's going to be tough for any Democrat to do it. So I would say right now, all statewide Democrats have a disadvantage, plain and simple.
I want to ask.
How do you like?
I know Scott said we're going to let you go. Do that.
No, it's fine.
Kyle, you mentioned abortion and Oklahoma being a pro-life state. I know there's been some other polling out there recently that's kind of, whether Oklahomans support a total ban on abortion.
Right.
And I think that's a question y'all will be fielding with News 9 and News 6 soon as well. Do you make any of the headlines that we've seen in the last couple of days that say, Oklahomans, maybe this is going too far for them? Does that flesh out for you?
I would say, there are some residuals, but again, I think meaning there are some, and I hate using the phrase because it's so outdated, but establishment country club Republicans that don't want outright ban and outlaw and that kind of stuff. So there might be some pushback within the party, but overall, Republicans are pro-life, and as long as the legislature is supermajority, it's going to be very difficult to change that. So I think that it will be a tough issue for Democrats, because you used to have pro-life Democrats. Dan Bourne, I mean, you used to have pro-life Democrats. You don't anymore, and so it's kind of one of those issues that is kind of tricky. But I think overall, it is a win for Republicans.
By the way, do you think that Mark Wayne's introduction of the biceps is going to help him with certain demographics? I mean, today's commercial is like, I mean, he's working out good right now. I mean, he looks super fighting weight right now.
Yeah,
he does.
You don't when you show up to an event, you want to make sure you don't have an opponent sticker on.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like, I don't want a TW or whatever.
I got a friend of mine training for a senior body bit, Pete Reed.
Yeah.
You remember Pete Reed? Okay.
Yep.
So he's pretty close to 70, and he's ripped right now. I'm going to see him actually at the his foundation, Force 50 Foundation, Thursday night awards. I already know who the winners are, but I'm not going to give it up. But I got to tell you, these guys are getting in shape for television. It works. I mean, obviously, people are looking for every advantage, right? So
right,
carrying calves and showing the guns and all of these sorts of things. I mean, that's Oklahoma.
Airplane. I don't know about Inhofe's guns for the past 30 years, but it works.
Different type of guns.
Right?
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
That's where you do this. Different kind of guns. All right. So
there you go.
Okay. Kyle Lovelace, the COO of Shepard Research. How's Bill doing?
He's doing great. He's just a little bit under the weather. He'd be on here tonight. He just had a little throat issue, and so he's trying to recuperate a little bit.
Probably feels pretty good that Alabama is making fun of Texas A&M right now instead of Mississippi.
Well, we can all make fun of Texas A&M. So
that's really true. The place where they buy all their
that's players. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so Bill's Mississippi. He was an Ole Miss guy, and so
that's right.
Fun to talk with him.
Yep.
I mean, he looks the part. He always has. Kyle Lovelace, COO, Shepard Research. I'm sure there'll be lots more. You and Storm talking News 9, News 106 down the road. It's going to be a really fun. Thanks for taking the time to get in the weeds with this.
Thanks for having me on anytime.
Okay, buddy. Thanks a lot.
All right,
man. Okay, so there's Kyle. Your thoughts about what he said tonight?
I'm really interested in the abortion question. That was my story today on some polling, 500 folks from Amber Integrated the other day. And basically it came back that said it's Republicans are divided. The question was if Roe versus the questions, it's not an easy question to ask because there's a spectrum, right? And I think that's sometimes something that gets left out. Like, what does it mean to be pro-life? Does it mean no exceptions? Does it mean rape and incest? Does it mean 15 weeks? It probably doesn't mean 15 weeks. But there was some polling done that said, should all abortions be banned in Oklahoma if Roe versus Wade falls? And 35% of Oklahomans said no. Should abortion be banned? 35% said yes, it should be banned. 55% said no. And on the Democrat side, it was like, 80-14 against, banning abortion. But on the Republican side, it was like 40% yes, ban all abortion. 45% no, don't ban abortion. So I'm interested to see kind of how that fleshes out within the Republican Party, and if it's enough for folks to vote. Joy Hoffmeister, of course, Republican until maybe 6 months ago, has a position that she's against it herself, but doesn't want other people put that necessarily on other people. I'm interested to see how that fleshes out. I guess I crunched the numbers on the votes within the legislature on the two pretty much all out bans on abortion, the felony side and the civil side, and 90% of Republican lawmakers, voted in favor of it. So the polling was reflecting kind of a split a little bit, maybe, but who knows if that fleshes out. I've talked to women, Republican women, who say maybe it's too far. I guess time will tell on that. Because, frankly, it hasn't been an issue that, Oklahoma's been a pro-life state. This is kind of what we take it. Yep, that's it. but have folks really thought about it much in the past 50 years because it's not really been up for debate.
Well, I think everybody's thinking that's a good point. I think most people, observers, believe that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, and then there's, then you're having extensive polling on this in all 50 states because it gets kicked back to them. There's one pro-life Democrat, by the way, in the state legislature, J.J. Dossett from Owasso, votes with Republicans on pro-life bills, which was interesting to me.
Like there's one left in the Democrat in the Congress. I think they're facing a re-election challenge right now. I had some sort of thought, but as a senior moment, it went away. Right. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's going to be interesting to see where, like you are saying, where this goes, because I can see on a debate stage in a year and a half, former guy being on a stage with other Republicans and having to defend his pro-choice record. Talking about Donald Trump.
Okay. But I think he's successfully, transitioned to pro-life. He got yeah. I watched a documentary on it the other day, and they had the biggest names of the family, PAC's family values, and they seemed sufficed.
Very interesting. Well, that'll be interesting. Kyle thinks he's going. I don't, but we'll see. I've got a brief interview that's just going to take a few minutes, and I won't do all of it. My friend Tim Farley with Southwest Ledger went down to Stevens County. If you probably had your mailbox full of, hey, we're having this fish fry in Duncan. I believe it was Duncan, where all the Republicans get together. And traditionally, whatever the Republicans do in Stevens County, at one time they sprayed for Republicans down there. But yeah, this is a sprayed for them. It's an old line, but nonetheless, guys like my old good friend Ed Apple, who was a House member, then Corporation Commissioner, was from Duncan. It was some of the early areas that became really Republican very early. Also, home of former Lieutenant Governor Jerry Haskins, a Democrat. I mean, it's been a very, very active area of our state politically. And so Tim covered it the other night, and we knew the governor was going to be there. Not everybody gets to talk. So I had a few questions. We're going to play a few minutes of this, and then Storme and I come back and comment on this. My friend Tim Farley with Southwest Ledger's on this evening. It's good to have you finally on the stream. Been working to do this for some time, Tim.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Now, the reason I was trying to get you on in particular this weekend was because you covered a Stevens County Republican get-together the other night, which I'm betting was pretty entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
And, we just had a conversation with Sooner Poll about some of these Republican primaries. They're going to be entertaining. They're going to be ugly as well. So we saw what's going on in terms of some of the big races, but you've got the AG race, you've got state superintendent, and tons of races down at the county level. Also, you've got some what you would call real MAGA adherents versus more mainstream Republicans, and man, that really turns into a battle royal. Give us your impressions of what you saw Saturday night in Duncan.
Well, it was a matter of the GOP faithful showing up to support Governor Stitt and to support their favorite candidates for the primaries. It was definitely a large gathering with about 800 people, tons of candidates from county to state to federal level. You had all the congressmen who are facing re-election there. You had everybody from the governor to candidates for state superintendent. And the governor got them riled up. He praised the abortion legislation that the legislature passed. He talked about the Save Women in Sports Act. Talked about how he's the greatest governor in the United States and that he himself saved Oklahoma during the, as he put it, so-called pandemic, which drew some eyebrows, I think. More than just a so-called pandemic, as you and I both know.
Well, he has some folks that are to his right that I forget the name of the guy that's running against him. It was Dr. Sherwood is the name of the individual that's from
Correct.
Really kind of the MAGA wing of the party. You also had, did Senator Langford show up?
Yeah, Senator Langford was there along with his wife.
They have MAGA wing of the party coming at them, which is interesting for you see have Governor Stitt and Senator Langford having attacks from the right, and they have been constantly showing they're from the right. And also, I mean, how did that play out? What did the folks that are challenging Langford and the governor, Senator Langford and the governor, I mean, what are they trying to say to woo the faithful over to them that the governor and Senator Langford aren't saying?
They're going far right wing, and I think Governor Stitt and Senator Langford are trying to be more moderate, if you could say that, than the right wingers. Uh, I covered an event in Duncan several months ago, and the head of the white Second Amendment group in Oklahoma made the comment that they needed to win at the ballot box so they didn't have to use the ammo box, which showed a lot of extremism on his part. But I think the incumbents are trying to stay away from that type of rhetoric so that they attract a larger base, because there's a lot of controversy in Governor Stitt's first term, as you and I both well know.
All right. So the folks that are challenging, based upon what we heard in the Sooner poll, the folks challenging Senator Langford, Governor Stitt, I'm trying to think of some of these others right now, and they're just not getting anywhere. I mean, the governor's pretty popular and Senator Langford are pretty popular, but the other side or the MAGA wing of the party are really coming after them hard. How does the crowd react to that sort of thing?
Well, the governor got great response Saturday night in Duncan. Senator Langford got a huge applause when he and his wife went on stage to introduce the governor. So you're right, they are popular, and most likely they'll win again because they're incumbents, they're Republicans, and they're in the state of Oklahoma. And they haven't done anything. Well, Senator Langford hasn't really done anything that would tarnish his reputation, that where he wouldn't win re-election. Governor Stitt really doesn't have anybody in the Republican primary that's going to challenge him. Sherwood and any other Republican, they're just going far right, and I don't think Oklahoma wants that. But Governor Stitt has made some, according to him and his crew, has made Oklahoma better than it was in 2018 when he was elected.
Okay, so that was, and we got a little bit further into the weeds there, but just basically what he was saying there is that rank and file that go to these events love the MAGA wing.
Yeah, now are those would that probably carry you further if it was a off election or something? But I think this, like Kyle was saying earlier, this isn't a presidential cycle. It is a midterm, but it has a feel like folks are going to be getting to the polls with literally, it seems like everyone and their dog, every seat up for election this year. I think maybe some of those more fringy tendencies, leanings help in maybe years or elections where there's not, such high turnout. I don't know if the core of the Republican Party who will be voting, in, I guess we're a little over a month. Yeah, a month and some change, if that appeals all that much to them.
It will be interesting to say the least. You've also got that in Oklahoma County, you're going to have that jail bond.
Yep.
That's going to be driving people to the polls. I mean, we haven't heard much about that in a while. Get back to covering that one. But the fact is that there are a group of folks out there that seem to be wildly popular with the rank and file on the ground that are, if they had their way, Kevin Stitt and James Langford would be defeated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but I who knows? I mean, maybe there's some more polling on this or something that, I'm people smarter than me know. But it seems to me the biggest knock on James Langford from this wing is that he voted to certify the election results. It's like, I just don't know that, mainstream Republicans in Oklahoma, if that is enough to boot James Langford. I mean, he's, checked all the boxes, and that's the knock against him. I don't know.
It's going to play out in Alabama tomorrow at the Mo Brooks thing.
Yep.
Okay, which one we're going to be watching close with the Purdue race, where by tomorrow night, I mean, former president may change his endorsement down there. He seems to do that as kind of on a whim. I'm gonna stay with them. No, I'm not. But Georgia's the one I'm going to watch tomorrow night is it Ratzenberger? Is that his name?
Mm.
Is that the guy that was the Secretary of State?
Uh,
I mean, be mixing him up with a guy in the John Ratzenberger
oh,
Cheers, but David. Oh, come on, man! You all know who I'm talking about. The Secretary of State that the president called and said, "I just need 18,000 more votes." That I cannot remember the guy's name. I
yeah,
bet we're about to find out any second now. I could even start playing some background music.
yeah, it is. It is Brad.
Ratzenberger.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So there's the one that Trump has really gone after hard.
You know, Scott, the for the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, you have to get a plural. You have to get over 50%, right, or it goes off to a runoff here in the state. I think it'll be interesting to see if the former president does wade into this. I've heard he'll wait until after the runoff, so it whittles your chances down to picking an unsuccessful candidate.
There has been some analysis of that Congressman Mullen has not been that much of a. I mean, he's got Trump in the commercials,
Right,
got Trump saying words for him.
that was a
but
gift.
Yeah.
3 seconds at the end of the rally.
Yeah. So that's the made for TV, but that he's not that big of a MAGA guy. I mean, that's subjective, I'm sure. I think former Speaker Shannon has been very outspoken pro Trump. And that's been something, as Kyle was pointing out, he was like really close the last time. And I think that was interesting. That was one of those races where the debate, or a lot of people made their mind up watching the Langford Shannon debate last time. I mean, it could change people's minds. Langford did an outstanding job that night, and then he went on to win that. So
Trump
it will be interesting.
EPA administrator. I mean, if you think Scott Pruitt doesn't have Trump's phone number, then I mean, you're probably wrong. So any of those three, and who else? Who knows who else could potentially get an endorsement from former president. And according to the Sooner poll, that matters to Republicans. It's interesting because just because you're a Trump supporter or Trump's, just because you're a Trump supporter doesn't mean that the far right stuff appeals to you. I think there is still some, stuff in the middle there where you're like, yeah, I supported him, but he lost. Where do those votes go in the Republican Party? That maybe the White House is now using ultra MAGA. I don't know if you've seen that montage, but maybe not the ultra MAGA, which I don't think is quite the pun that the White House thought it was. But where do the folks kind of in between in the Republican Party go?
I don't know. And the question you brought up 10 minutes ago, which is where the abortion thing is going to play into that big time, defining where this is all going to go. Well, we could talk about that forever. I wanted to get your take on a week ago Thursday. Now, we had a question on that on your vote counts, and I've had Kyle Hilbert was on hot seat the other day, and all the Republican leadership are playing very nice in the sandbox. Okay. But you can only, so I'm going to this is analysis, not commentary. You tell me if I'm wrong. They took away a lot of the governor's authority on these ARPA funds the other day.
That's totally fair.
And so they've taken that away. They're saying nice things, but that's got to sting in the executive branch.
To its credit, the governor said nice things back.
He did.
We read the statement last week. That was like, I'm very glad, they want to help in this process over the next month. No, I mean, it was big to me in that, just to recap, these funds, which will end up being $1.88 billion, I think they have half of that now, was in an OMES account under the governor's discretion. There's an advisory committee, joint committee of lawmakers who said the money should do this, should do that. But lawmakers passed it into, sent two bills to the governor's office last week to take that money back. The governor will still have input. He can veto any of these allocations they make, and the legislature could override the veto if they so desire. But it puts the legislature back in the driver's seat on nearly $2 billion worth of federal COVID relief funds, without a doubt. I mean, de facto, that's what it does. The governor hadn't signed that bill yet. I think he will. I don't know what good it is to, when you have 90% of the legislature calling for the special session, they could easily override it, pulling that money back. But I think it's a big deal.
If he vetoes it, what he said the other day it'll undermine
Yeah, I don't
what
see
he
that.
said. Yeah. Okay. So the way I understand this is you've got all this legislation. They're going to be back Thursday or Friday.
Yep.
You're waiting to see what the governor is going to veto. That's why they didn't come back. All right. Then you also have this situation where that there are some egos on the line here. Kyle Hilbert did a great job on Hot Seat the other day, which he said basically, look, we're going to lose $150 million if we don't start moving faster. Now, if that's not an indictment of how it was being done, I don't know what is. But that gets inflation claims $150 million because we're moving too slow.
Right.
That's fair, right? What was about to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't asked the governor's team about this specific point, but I mean, the math makes sense at 8% depreciation over a year. If lawmaker, granted, I'm sure the governor's team would say that they will have had this spent before lawmakers make it back in February next year. But that's the Speaker Pro Tem's calculations that if they sat on this pile of money, it'll be worth 100 and some change million less if they were to have to come back and spend it in February. So I don't know why they didn't pull this money back earlier in the session. I don't know if something went awry with the budget. Of course, again, by the way, nearly $10 billion budget. Haven't heard a peep out of the governor on, yeah, this is great, or this is the worst document I've ever seen in my life. Apparently, his team was invited late to the budget negotiations. Non-doc has had reporting on that. So he has. I haven't seen when it was officially received by his office, but he'd have 5 days to, act on the budget stuff.
And that's why they're out of town, and they'll come back in. There were several bills that had wide margins of passage that he vetoed. Do you think that based upon your conversation, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Last go around that he vetoed, or this, yeah.
Do you think the wounds are pretty deep right now? That they're doing the best they can to keep the lid on, but there's some pretty deep feelings right now?
I mean, I think some of the stuff you're seeing play out is a sign of that. I loved the speaker in his exclusive interview last week. No theater here. Is that what he said, or something along those lines?
No theater here.
That's and it's quote. Like good for you for saying that. But I mean, the side effects are of something deeper underlying. Now, I have heard and talked with folks in the governor's team that says, if he wants to veto something, whether or not it gets overridden is not of consequence to him. If he wants to veto something, he will. Veto overrides don't embarrass the governor. Those are the conversations I've had with folks, to where if he wants to make a point, he's going to do it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's good as well. Not taking, I say not taking things personally. And then also you've heard that, a lot gets taken personally with kind of some of the mudslinging we've seen. So proof will be in the pudding on that. Sine die is Friday at 5:00, the 27th. Constitutionally, they got to be out of there. So I guess we're fixing to see how deep some of those wounds are.
Interestingly enough, if the governor wins re-election and he goes back, it'll be the same gang of three running things. Let me just make one more observation, and you tell me if I'm all wet here. The pro tem took some licks this session, especially he put his name on the line for that voucher bill, which didn't get heard in the House, and he really put his reputation on that. That had to sting. Say again?
It didn't get a chance to go to the House. No. It didn't pass in his own chamber.
That's not great.
Right.
The governor's taking his share of wounds this session. The guy that comes out of this, in my opinion, just from if you look at up and down, especially when you look at some of the players in the House of Representatives on the Republican side, and what we would say kind of far right wing, keeping a lid on everything, is McCall. To me, he's had an extraordinary session. No embarrassments. There's obviously the situation with that grand jury that there's been some whispers about that. But when it comes right down to it, I mean, he's going to go into his last session, probably the highest standing he's ever had. And you know what? In about 6 months, the gubernatorial race for 2026 begins.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know that Charles McCall's name's got to be in the middle of that.
Well, and he also has folks around him. You mentioned Kyle Hilbert, the new, well, I say new Speaker Pro Tem this session, numbers guy, ushered through Project Ocean, can explain that, the dollars and cents guy. And then you also have Ryan Martinez chairing the Swadley's investigation that are sending out subpoenas that are, verbally eviscerating Trump, not say Trump, stick cabinet members for not being present at, these hearings. I mean, when you talk about some of the underlying tensions, that I almost forgot, that Swadley's investigation, they were just so lawmakers were so up in arms that Stephen Harp wasn't there. And the governor's office saying you knew he wasn't going to be there. It's very interesting. I mean, but to go back to what you're saying, I think the speaker has folks around him on his team, on his side that are pushing. And the give on the other side of that maybe is TBA a little bit. But I think he's sitting in a good position. I don't think there's much, the speaker wanted more tax cuts this session, but perhaps outside of that, I don't know there's much this session that the speaker would have wanted to be different. You know what I mean? Obviously, Treat would have wanted ESA or voucher bills, if you call them that, to pass. The governor wouldn't have wanted some of the Swadley stuff or stuff like that to happen. But if you're McCall, I think in his mind, you're sitting pretty for, an eventual run to another office, maybe.
Yeah, you make a great point, which is the team. And you can't forget that there's a solid dude right there with the speaker who's been there the 6 years he's been there. And you see him all the time, and sometimes you take it for granted about the steady hand that Eccles lends to McCall.
Okay. Yeah.
That's exactly. And then you've got some great people over in the Senate. I mean, Roger Thompson. Roger's not as media. He's not as much in the media as, say, the House leaders. But you're right. Hilbert, Martinez, they're superstars.
Yeah, and sitting on either side of the speaker, ready to go. I'm not saying they're attack dogs for him, but they're all moving in the same direction on the outside.
And let me mention two more, just in all fairness on parties. Munson's going to be a superstar.
Oh yeah.
Okay, she's going to have probably a smaller caucus than Leader Virgin had, and Julia Kurt and Kerry Hicks keep showing up in bipartisan ways, advancing theories that not all Oklahomans agree with, but it's sort of like old school. They're very young, but they sort of have that U.S. Senate, the way the U.S. Senate used to work, and all that decorum and all that grace under fire that minorities have, minority caucuses have, and they're such small minorities. So there's some names for the future that I think people are going to go, I've heard of her before, heard of them before. So there's some really young people that are really about to. You'll see the same names: the governor, the pro tem, the speaker for the next 2 years. But after that, man, it's a huge change is coming to who's running the show in Oklahoma in 2 years.
Yeah, those three men have been at it. And as you have pointed out before, when you're in a room, even if the governor wins re-election, when you're in that room, the governor's still the junior leg of that stool, which is interesting.
It most certainly is. Would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall a week ago Thursday. All right, so it's allergies, and it's, by the way, it's probably allergy, and then all that wood that you're burning there at your house.
I know. It's the thunder's rolling, Scott. My eyes are getting droopy. You're on borrowed time, man. I'm missing a good nap.
I am. So, well, listen, first off, we're very, very appreciative of you joining us this evening to take a little time to break this down because it's odd time, and hope you can be with us. Well, next Monday is going to be Memorial Day. I think we might just tape it and premiere it next week. We'll just talk to the wizard, Ryan Welton, about what we do next week because it will be Memorial Day next.
Phoenix, Arizona this time next week. So,
okay, good for you. You going to take the golf clubs?
No, but I'll tell you, I'm switching over to the morning shift in 2 weeks. And after watching the PGA this weekend, I golfed in high school, and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time to get back at it. I'll have all day to do whatever I want on the morning shift, and maybe
I got the itch myself after watching that. I really did. But they've been sitting in the closet for a long time. I'm thinking,
you got to
go do some of that.
Yourself.
Absolutely. Okay. Storm Jones, thanks so very much for your time.
Yeah, happy to do it.
And to all our viewers, News 9, News on 6, and all the platforms, we appreciate you being here. We'll see you soon. We'll see you down the road. Have a great evening.
See y'all.